So in this story, we're going to learn about someone who quit their job as a corporate M&A lawyer in Hong Kong, right? And the rough salary for a certain level of experience, like 4 to 7 years of experience, is around $200,000 to $400,000 in this type of corporate M&A lawyer job, right? So let's learn a bit more about why this person quit, but just to explain you a bit more about being a corporate M&A lawyer. So corporate M&A lawyer means that you're a corporate lawyer that works on mergers and acquisitions, where companies will be merging or companies will be acquiring other companies. So it's something that's kind of common in the investment banking industry. Now, what they do is they help structure deals in terms of structuring these merger or acquisitions legally and regulatory frameworks, and how they can do this without triggering any type of government backlash around competitive and competition laws, things like that. Doing the due diligence, there's loads of paperwork that needs to get done in terms of investigating the company's financial legal operations, make sure there's no kind of audit issues or kind of hidden financial misconduct, things like that. So there's loads of like kind of investigatory corporate work that gets done around that, and signing off on legal waivers that they're not doing anything dodgy, negotiation documents around contracts, the finances around it, purchase agreements, shareholder agreements, how to get an efficient deal closed that way. So let's learn why he'd quit such a job that was paying quite well for him.
As a lawyer in a commercial law firm, I had a pretty good situation. I ended up at a firm with a really good culture where people were encouraged to have a life outside of work as much as possible. I ended up in a practice area that I found really fascinating, where I had work that I really enjoyed doing. And probably most importantly, I ended up working with people that I actually genuinely liked. I had a boss who I still maintain a personal relationship with to this day, and colleagues both senior and junior that I worked with on several matters and happened to get along with outside of work. On top of this, my firm had one of the most flexible work-from-home policies of any Hong Kong law firm that I know of, and that was something that was really important to me. So, honestly speaking, all things considered, I had it pretty good.
So that's an interesting start there, right? So he had quite a good work culture, got on well with the people, personal relationship with the boss, which is quite rare where people have a bit of tense relationship with their boss, and flexibility to work from home. So it's kind of interesting that he would quit kind of a high-paying job that was giving him all these benefits. And that's why it's important to learn why he actually did quit, right? Because sometimes money isn't enough, or even a nice workplace that pays well isn't enough. And we'll learn more in this little clip here.
You're always on the clock to some degree, and you're kind of accountable to your clients at all times. Let me explain. Going into the profession, I kind of had this idea that a transactional lawyer was someone that was just brought in to help a client do its deals and draft its documents, and that is true to some degree. But the other side of it, which isn't really so advertised, is that oftentimes when you're working very closely with a company as your client, you kind of get really involved with everything they're doing, and you kind of end up supporting them in many other ways. In some cases, you kind of end up in a situation where your job is just to help keep your client as organized as possible so that a deal can actually get done. If there are internal things that they need to take care of, that you need to keep them on top of. This became pretty obvious to me as I got more senior and started to get matters where I was the person in charge or I was the person that was running the file. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So one time I was working on a file where I basically called my client contact every single day from Monday to Thursday, reminding them that we had a deadline early the next week and that there were a number of documents that they said they would have no problem taking care of. And every time I brought it up, the client contact would reassure me that everything was under control and that it would be taken care of in time. Well, fast forward to Friday of that week, I get a call from my client at around 9:30 p.m., kind of in a panic, when the contact was leaving from the office and realized that the work just hadn't been done. As a result of this, I kind of urgently had to cancel all of my Friday night and weekend plans and had to stay in and help draft the documents. And because the deadline was early next week and we needed the client to confirm a number of details in those documents, we had to work pretty much all night to get the documents to the client by Saturday morning for their review and input. And thank goodness I had a fantastic trainee with a really good attitude, because this was one of those situations where it wasn't a one-man job and I really needed his help. And this kind of occurrence wasn't really an uncommon occurrence either. I mean, this was something that kind of happened to me more and more as I got more and more senior and got more responsibilities.
So that's quite important, right? So you're 24-hour on call, and this is typical for many corporate jobs, right? You might be working on even a high-paying, kind of high-status job like a corporate M&A lawyer, but it's similar to a help desk, like an IT help desk, where anytime the client needs you, you're meant to respond. You have to be very organized. You might have to deal with micromanaging from your management, from your client. And you have all this common instance where you'd be working with these kind of big name corporate companies, but they can be quite lazy and inefficient, disorganized, even senior people there. You're really questioning like, oh, I'm working with this big brand name company, maybe two of them, they're doing a merger, but they're so disorganized, they don't have some basics sorted around their finances or their legal matters, and then you've got to deal with that, right? And sometimes they do unnecessarily leave things to the last minute, and that doesn't impact the company, it impacts you, because you have to pick up the slack for that client or senior management who haven't done things. And the thing is, sometimes you feel a lack of control over your life because you don't have a control over your schedule as an employee. It's like I say, if you're 24-hour on call, I mean, to what extent can you enjoy that high-paying salary? Because you could be a Saturday night, you're having dinner with your girlfriend or your wife, and then they call you and say, oh, you got to do this piece of work, so you got to log in from home and do some piece of work when you're trying to maybe enjoy an evening with your family. And this is more common than you think, right? Not just for corporate M&A lawyers, other high-paying jobs. And he was mentioning how it was impacting both him and his junior employee, who was like a trainee or an intern. And these type of things become normalized quite early on in the career, and then you just end up becoming kind of a slave to the job, and they can dictate any of your time. And the truth is, even when you're senior, some people think, oh, I have to deal with those awkward work hours when I'm junior, but when I'm more senior, I'll have more power and control and I can delegate to junior employees. A lot of the times that isn't the case, right? So he's mentioning here where, sometimes you can't delegate everything. Sometimes you have to do things yourself, or yourself and your junior employee. And that's not due to your own inefficiency. You've been very organized. But when it comes to clients or senior management, you can't necessarily push back. You have to take the hit for no extra money. You're not going to get a bonus, or in his case, he was working in a way where he wasn't billing particular hours. I think he was maybe working in-house. So that means he's not going to get like an extra bonus for doing extra work outside of work hours. And then the thing is, you lack even if you're in a high-paying job, you lack the leverage to kind of do what you want on your own terms, right? You're kind of a cog in a machine. So you have to kind of operate in that way that you can be replaced at any moment. Now, if the client says you got to do work at 1 a.m. on a Monday morning, because the time difference and they haven't done something on time, then you've got to do it, right? You don't have the leverage to say, no, we'll do it tomorrow. And then the thing is, like I say, if you're not getting paid by the hour, particularly, it can be demotivating because you're not like, oh, I'm getting paid another $600 this hour because I'm working at an awkward time outside of work schedule. And the thing is, because there's a disorganization from the company you're working for, even if it's well paid or a client, everything becomes urgent, time sensitive, you have to do this quickly, and then clients might not look at it for another couple of weeks. Same thing with management. And then you have to work on this constantly be on edge thing, and that's when the cortisol levels, the stress levels you deal with every day, it can be a bit overwhelming at times, right? It's like you're always on edge, you're always on call, always got to deal with this or that. And then when you have no control of your schedule, like I say, it feels like you don't have any life. And then the question becomes, you have to ask yourself, how long are you willing to tolerate this? How long are you willing to tolerate operating essentially like a doctor or a nurse who's on 24-hour call, or someone who's like working in the fire brigade, when any moment there could be an instance they have to go and rush to a burning house. In this case, it'll be like, to use a corporate terminology, you're constantly fighting fires, firefighting, which is dealing with one problem or the other that's completely unexpected. And the thing is, the sense of powerlessness is difficult to deal with. And that's why you see people resort to coping mechanisms like consumerism or just unhealthy lifestyle habits, right? And what this system does, what the corporation does, even if you're in a high-paying role, it tends to train people like you train a dog. It's almost like punishing a dog for doing the wrong thing or giving them a treat for doing the right thing. And that's how you kind of become trained as an employee, like a powerless dog, right? And you end up forgetting your life priorities and not setting a clear boundary. And that's why some of these high-paying jobs, as we've covered in some of my other videos, it does result in health issues and kind of unhappiness and dysfunctional personal lives.
And I quit my job, which is that I wanted to find something to do for work that felt a bit more meaningful to me. Being a professional services provider like a lawyer, you're kind of a hired gun. Clients come to you when they have a transaction or a deal or just something they need your help with, and you're there to help them facilitate whatever it is and help them get it done. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, and there's definitely an important role that commercial lawyers have to play in transactions. But at times when it felt like I was putting my physical and mental well-being on the line just to get a deal done by pulling consecutive 7-day weeks, late nights, all-nighters, it definitely didn't help that I didn't feel a strong sense of ownership over my work product and didn't feel that really strong sense of satisfaction when a deal made it across the finish line, because at the end of the day, I felt like a facilitator and not an instigator. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this. First off, when lawyers get a bit more senior, like at the counsel or partner level, they tend to develop deeper relationships with their clients. I saw this in my own team, and the partner that I worked for had great relationships with his clients. But I didn't really want to feel like I had to stick around for 5 or 10 more years to potentially make partner before I started to get those deeper relationships with my clients and felt a bit more invested in the work. The second thing is that I do think that I found some sense of job satisfaction from just trying to do the best job that I could with everything that I did. We always try to do the best job possible because at the end of the day, what little control you do have is really grounded in just trying to deliver the best work product possible. And when you do that, you do feel a sense of accomplishment and pride. Clients often appreciated that we would go above and beyond with everything that we did, and there was definitely a sense of accomplishment knowing that we put out a really good product. But at the same time, that level of satisfaction wasn't really there for me, and it kind of declined over time. By contrast, and just as an example,
So, it's kind of interesting here, right? When he's talking about, working 7 days a week, late nights, all nights. He had some little footage there, like B-roll of being stressed at the desk. And this is the thing about ownership, and this is a reoccurring theme in some of my videos, right? People want ownership over the work they do. They don't mind working hard. It's not like we have lazy people, even though some of the propaganda out there likes to say that Gen Z or millennials are lazy. There's just a reoccurring theme of people want ownership of their work, right? And you can't take pride from your work if it's taken from you, right? In the sense that, you might work hard on something, but your manager gets the credit, or the client reaps financial rewards from a particular outcome and you don't get a decent cut of it in your bonus or in your pay package. And then the other thing would be, it's like you might produce incredible pieces of work, maybe financial risk reports, corporate legal analysis. Like I said, if it's not the management or the client, it's the company taking credit for it. Or it might just get filed away and never referred to after a couple months when you might get credit for it. You might be included in your performance review, but then it's like the company is like, what have you done for me lately? So they start snapping their fingers at you like you're a waiter at a restaurant, like, oh, can you do more work? Can you do this more for me? And it's like there's no ultimate end goal. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's just like a continuous hamster wheel where you're just not taking ownership. You're not really getting much credit, and you really do feel kind of worthless as a cog in the machine, even if you're a highly paid cog in the machine.
And finally, it's kind of worth mentioning that the global situation of the last few years has kind of changed the profession in a really big way, and it's kind of accelerated my timeline to quit my job. A few years ago, when we transitioned to work from home as a mandatory measure, we were given laptops or other means to basically ensure that we could do our jobs fully while also being at home. This is a really good thing in many respects, and as I mentioned, my firm had a very generous work from home policy even after it was no longer mandatory, which I benefited greatly from. Over time, since the line between being in the office and being at home started to blur more and more, so did the notion of the idea of being off work. When I first started working, there was definitely still a notion of getting off work and going home for the day. And of course, you still got online on the weekends or at night if there was something urgent to take care of, but for all intents and purposes, when you left for the day, you wouldn't really be doing substantial work if you could avoid it. Over the last few years, though, there's definitely been a bit of a decline in that separation, and it definitely didn't really feel that much different being at home than it did being at work. I routinely got emails from clients pretty much expecting things to be actioned right away, and while partners didn't really expressly ask for things to be done right away, there was this culture shift in that people were online all the time. So it did feel strange to not action things right away or to respond to emails as soon as I saw them, even if they came in pretty late. And at the same time, travel restrictions coupled with the fact that I wasn't really going out and spending money due to the global situation meant that I was able to save more money and also work on my personal finances a bit to build a better runway for myself after quitting.
So it's good what he's referring to here, and this is how you can make the most of your time, right? If you are working from home, you do have a kind of quiet period in your job, is focusing on that remote work aspect. Like I say, if you can leverage that, focusing on your personal finance, and that's what he did. He got himself in a position where he was able to quit through investing in various different assets, right? And this is really a game changer for everyone, right? The whole workplace dynamic and the kind of leverage that employees see they have through working from home and having that flexibility is kind of a game changer for everyone. But there is that challenge of no separation between work and your personal life, expected to be online all the time, particularly if you're working a high-paying corporate job. But as much as you can, try to set those boundaries, right? Whether you have to leverage a brief reference to mental health, you have to have certain boundaries from work, and certain times you need to focus on your mental health in the evenings, or you need to spend time with family or elderly family members you're looking out for if you don't have your own wife and kids, things like that. This is how you can set some boundaries if you are working from home, so it's not completely getting dumped on you and they think you're a single person with no life whatsoever, so you just got to work all hours, unlike people who have families and things like that. So you got to be careful around that, and that's another reason why people might quit, right? Not only just a lack of ownership, they want some separation and clear boundaries between work and their personal life that sometimes you just don't have. And that's a key takeaway here, right? After a point, even if you're earning a lot of money, you want that time freedom. You want ownership of your work, your time, your schedule. It's not just money, so you need to plan ahead for how you might be super eager to get lots of experience and work hard in maybe your 20s, your early 30s, depending on your life situation. But over time, plan ahead for how your mindset might shift, your wealth goals might shift. You might prefer time freedom over financial freedom. And many people are these days because they're seeing how difficult it is maybe to progress financially. So bear in mind how your state of mind might shift over time. And there's two interesting comments here, right? One is IC Hall, who says that honestly, you quit. Honestly, of course you quit. I watched your week in the life video. It's actually not okay to work that hard and be wired in 7 days a week. Any person will get burnt out. And when you take the step back to reflect, you realize the input and effort does not always translate to meaningful outcomes. Happy that you quit and hope you find something that isn't so taxing in the future. So this is a thing. It's like sustainability. You might be in a high paying job, but how long can you sustain that without it really having a negative impact on your personal health or your mental health, things like that. And then we've got this comment from Michael JE5TT. It's a horrible life. I put on 40 grams since I started as a corporate, 40 kilograms of becoming overweight while working as a corporate lawyer for a top tier Australian firm 5 years ago. I had issues with my health from sitting for extended periods. I lost friends because I couldn't spend time with them. All I did was work. All of the above is true. The health issues, the lack of personal relationships, things like that. But he's terrified of quitting. And see, this is the opposite side of that, right? Some people do just stick with it until they do get miserable, and then they may have real negative impacts on their personal lives. People get divorced because they're working quite long hours and things like that. So it really is shifting dynamics. And part of the reason I cover this type of topic, right, is people quitting high-paying corporate jobs, is that this is the reality of sometimes how it can be in the corporate environment. It's not this kind of fairy tale of like high power, high status. I don't watch the TV show Mad Men, but I think Mad Men is kind of maybe an illusion about this. There's lots of TV shows like Suits or Billions and all these type of Gordon Gekko type of Wall Street movies that may have a very distorted perception of what the corporate life is actually like, and I wanted to give you an honest insight of that. That's a good, interesting take, because this guy is working in corporate M&A. Like I say, it's like being a lawyer in investment banking, so it's a good midpoint between the legal field and the finance field, and how they two cross over in terms of long work hours, being on call, maybe lacking some ownership, and how even with remote work that might not be the best option. So I hope you found that helpful. I've been working in the finance industry for over 10 years, investment banking, Goldman, Morgan Stanley, HSBC, and many other banks. And I offer a career advice service to deal with these type of challenging work environments. There is a link in the description if you want to speak with me directly. Let me know in the comments, would you quit a job paying $400,000 a year roughly? And there are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video.